Hello everyone and welcome to the third LibertyWorks Vodcast. Today we're going to have a deep dive in the same-sex marriage discussion. And secondly, we're going to talk about the diversity agenda inside corporations. Today, my guest is Nicola Wright, senior writer at LibertyWorks, who's just recently written an article for Spectator Australia on the recent laws around the same-sex marriage plebiscite. So, Nicola, welcome to the show again.
Hello, thank you.
So, first of all, let's discuss your article. So, what's happening around? What was the deal with these laws that just passed the Senate in relation to the plebiscite?
So they're the Marriage Law Survey It was the Marriage Law Survey Additional Safeguards Bill.
Right.
And it immediately got rushed through both houses. There was no division in the Senate. They didn't even vote on it. It just got waved straight through. And so basically the bill seeks to provide a further safeguard against vilification, intimidation, and threats to cause harm based on the religious conviction, sexual orientation, or gender identity of intersex status of a particular person or group. So it's basically designed to apply to both sides of the debate, and it's temporary, so it's only going to be in effect until November, after the survey results have been announced.
Right, okay. So on paper, that sounds decent enough that people should be kind to each other and not too harsh in the things they say. However, we both know that we recently had a Labor senator crying in the Senate because one of her family members got handed a no brochure. So basically any kind of argument against same-sex marriage often gets interpreted as hate speech. So yeah, this is the problem, isn't it?
Well, I think so. And the main problem is that, it shows that both sides of politics are only too happy to make these kind of new laws that restrict how we express ourselves. So it's subjective. So something like being vilified, obviously that senator in question you just mentioned would have felt that way down at the shops just by having a pamphlet handed to her.
Yeah.
So there's no kind of real concrete guideline by which you could say that you've been vilified or intimidated, which is similar to 18C, isn't it, where
that's right.
It's a subjective kind of set of rules. And the other funny thing about it is that George Brandis is the gatekeeper on what complaints can go further, and he's has a partisan position on the same-sex marriage debate. So as Corey Bernardi said, it's a bit strange that this is the person who can decide which complaints go through.
Yeah.
So not all of the bill is bad per se. I mean, there's some rules in there that are similar to the Australian Electoral Commission rules on like authorised advertising. So there could be some benefit to those. But the vilification and intimidation bit, I think, is a problem.
Yeah. I mean, the whole idea that you need these laws anyway. I mean, if I see a no vote on the TV, I think I'm pretty safe in guessing that it's probably some Christian group who's who sponsored that. I don't necessarily, and those authorization things aren't particularly valuable. There's some person I've never heard of, and some
who listens to them. Nobody listens to that.
Yeah, so it's a bit crazy. I mean, George Brandis, he's such a great defender of free speech, so much so that our friend Brendan O'Neill wrote an entire chapter in his book, A Duty to Offend, about what a great guy George Brandis is, and then had to write a second chapter following it, retracting everything that he said, more or less, because he caved and he backed down on the issue of 18C.
It's a shame.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, I have to say, this whole debate is getting a little bit nasty. But then again, debates in politics do. You know, the same-sex marriage debate is not unique in that. I mean, we fight in the climate change space, in the energy policy space, and you know, if you don't believe that wind and solar can replace baseload coal power, you hate the environment and you're a horrible person, according to many. So, you know, all of these political debates get nasty.
And that's okay. It's like, why can't, you know, you don't have to get involved in them.
Yeah.
If you find it too, like, it bothers you, you really don't have to pay any attention to it.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think rules like this kind of send a message to everybody that there is a bigger problem than what we really have. And I think it makes people feel victimised because it's a message all the time of, we've got to protect you, and nasty things are being said, and this debate's really awful. And that doesn't make people feel good either. That is just as damaging. And like Penny Wong said, these laws aren't going to stop hurtful comments.
Yes,
even if a complaint goes through and someone gets a fine, it's not going to take it back, is it?
Yes, of course. I think Penny Wong said that in the context of not wanting to allow free speech at all. But
yeah.
So and I mean, of course, Penny Wong is a great example. I mean, she got very upset because you know, the people have been saying that a child deserves a mother and a father, and not having that is child abuse, is the case some people have made. Now, that's a very strong, not a very particularly diplomatic way of putting that argument.
No, I think child abuse is going a bit far. But yeah.
But many Australians would feel, maybe not quite that strongly, but would certainly feel that a child being raised by a same-sex couple is undesirable. But
it's okay to question that as well.
Yeah, exactly. And
so it wasn't that long ago that being gay wasn't even legal. So, you know, to then say that same-sex parent family is completely fine, no, you're not even allowed to question it. And the fact that you're questioning it is hurting someone so badly that, you know, they need to seek counselling.
Yes.
I think it's just saying that most, you know, LGBT people are you know, weak and can't handle hearing something that they don't like.
And I think part of the debate is part of the reason why I suspect they didn't want to debate is, in actual fact, the LGBTI community and also single women as well have achieved all kinds of rights that have kind of snuck through Parliament over the last 2 decades that actually the public didn't really know was happening, didn't really, you know, like being able to have a child through IVF as a single mother or lesbian couple. You know, that's never been debated. And I bet you, you know, yes, there's probably 50% support for same-sex marriage, but when people imagine that, they imagine, I'm generalising here, but they probably imagine 2 blokes or 2 women shacking up together, not having kids. That's probably what they imagine. And so when, you know, so it's putting a spotlight on the fact that these rainbow families exist, and there's probably an awful lot of people who aren't comfortable with that, and some of these laws, I think, are a way of punishing anyone who actually expresses an opinion on that, on what's been happening in that area.
Yeah, and so the mindset is that expressing that opinion is like some sort of violence against those people, against rainbow families. But it's not.
Yeah. I mean, personally, I'll say originally I was probably a bit uncomfortable with the idea of rainbow families myself, but sort of the more I thought about it, the more I thought the good thing about rainbow families is that there's natural barriers to entry there that don't exist in the heterosexual world. So it's quite hard for 2 lesbians or 2 gay men to have a child or to adopt a child, a lot harder than it is for just a random person to get pregnant.
Yeah.
And so you're probably going to get a better class of people who actually want to have children. So
Yes.
that when I think about it rationally, even though I have sort of an emotional sort of uncomfortableness with it, I kind of think,
Mm.
it's all part of it. So,
Yeah.
well, now there was another thing that you were bringing to the attention, that there's groups that are going to be monitoring online discussion groups
Yes.
on same-sex marriage. So, what's that about? What's happening there?
So this is coming out of Queensland, and I imagine it's probably the first of many of these sorts of situations we're going to be seeing. So it's the LGBTI Legal Service who are running a project called Like Love, which involves training and coordinating volunteers to monitor online forums, media and posters to ensure accountability where unlawful vilification may occur. So basically it's a vigilante group of people going around everywhere actively seeking offensive material so they can dob people in for breaching these new laws that have just come in. And there's a really good quote from the lady who's running it. And she says, just bear with me. I think having a postal vote makes people feel like their homophobia is legitimised and they have a right to say whatever they want about LGBTI people. And that's not the case under the law, which is disgusting, really, when you think that under the law, people aren't allowed to say what they think about LGBTI.
It's absolutely terrible.
It's a thought crime. This is thought crime territory, which I think is sinister.
Yeah, I agree. What's next? They're going to start giving some of their rainbow children a whistle, and that they'll blow that whistle and go, for criminal, for criminal. And the audacity, some of these people in Queensland, I bet they went along to QPAC and saw 1984 when it was out last month and said, oh, this is all about Trump's America. It has nothing to do with the kind of things we're doing right now.
I know. And, and just to make it clear, just because, we're kind of against these sorts of hate speech laws, it doesn't mean we agree with people who vilify, LGBTI people. It's not about that.
No.
So I'll just read this comment that we received on my article this week.
Yes.
Which was someone saying, all I saw was some libertarian claptrap whining about not being able to say whatever they want to whoever they want. And which is completely missing the whole point.
Yeah.
That advocating for free speech does not mean an endorsement of what all sorts of dreadful shit people are saying.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're not condoning it,
Absolutely. And I think one of the great things that's come out of it is, for people, the problem with this issue is that it's not good enough to kind of support it on intellectual grounds. Like, unless you're getting your car resprayed to be rainbow colours and putting a rainbow flag outside of your house, you're a thought criminal to these people, and you really people just need to understand it intellectually. And one of the good things I've come out about it is I've seen the no arguments, and because I'm sort of a bit of a cultural warrior, and I really don't like a lot of the people in the same-sex marriage yes side, because they're authoritarian and vice versa. I sort of emotionally, even though I always intended to vote yes, emotionally didn't like those people. But when I've seen what a lot of the no camp have come out and said, like personally, I found a lot of their arguments quite stupid. So I think it's a real power of free speech that if you let stupid ideas out there rather than shutting them up, they get revealed, and it takes the power away from them. But
definitely,
if you bury it underground, then it gives them an allure that they don't really deserve. I'll just say one thing about the same-sex marriage issue is I was looking up what the law actually is at the moment, and I found out that it's actually currently legal to marry your first cousin. So, but it's not legal to marry someone of the same gender. So now most of us find marrying your first cousin quite disgusting. You know, that it's not something we'd tolerate, but obviously in some cultural groups, and probably even in some more cult-like aspects of Christianity, you'd probably find people who marry their first cousin. You know, the people who really reject outside society and they want to keep it in the family. And you know, we find that most of us are quite disgusted by that, but it's legal. And so the argument, all of these arguments from Qantas and all of these other groups, like, is you've got to love same-sex marriage. No, you don't have to love same-sex marriage to vote yes for it. You can just sort of tolerate it. You don't have to accept it. You can just tolerate it. And I think that's something in so many of these debates that gets missed. That's
a good point.
So
there's something else. There's something else worth saying with this whole legislation business too, is that it's, even though it's temporary, it's setting a precedent. So, you know, there's already been calls for this sort of stuff to be permanent. Well, I imagine if Labor were to get in, we'll probably end up with some sort of expansion on hate speech laws to cover all these identity groups, including religion, which is blasphemy laws revisited.
Well, I believe that's their policy. That it is their policy to extend 18C to cover a whole range of other issues. And I'm quite sure that if next time they win government, they will get some sort of 18C on steroids.
So can you imagine that combined with emergence of these vigilante-style groups who are, you know, actively seeking out reading stuff that they find offensive? Like, if this is so offensive, why are you actively looking for it?
In my article a little while back, I said the same-sex marriage lobby has become a bit like Christians who watch a lot of pornography and seem very obsessed with sodomy. That they're completely obsessed by homophobia to and it's just a very unhealthy obsession that they have. And I see it on my own Facebook that, you know, people are finding the most obscure memes and going, oh, look at this. And I've got some pretty right-wing people on my Facebook, and none of them are sharing those memes. The only people who are sharing those memes are a few nutbags in super right-wing groups.
That we can all easily ignore.
Yeah, that's right. And a whole bunch of same-sex marriage activists. You know, they're sharing, and you know, perhaps that works for them. But look, we're just going to show this video of that we were looking at earlier of some violence that happened. Where was it again? Where?
I think it's University of Sydney.
Yeah, University of Sydney. So there's been a lot of violence between with some of these protests, which is really unfortunate. So we'll just show you that footage now.
This is the voice of love, the voice of compassion, and the voice of tolerance. This is it right here. No one's going to hit anyone. No one's going to hit anyone. Why is the no one's going to hit anyone. Tony, tell us. Why did you
And so that was the footage. What do you think of that? What's your takeaway from what's going on there, Nicola?
Well, I hate looking at that sort of thing, so I made myself watch it, but I get infuriated. But you know, I guess these are the fringe elements. But these are the people that are, you know, that are turning people off.
Yeah.
Well, maybe they are, or maybe they're not. There's lots of people going around who say, I was going to vote yes, but now I'm voting no. But whether that's actually true or whether they were always voting no, I don't know.
I suspect it's probably the case. I'd be very disappointed if anyone changes their view based on what a few idiots do either way, to be honest.
But it's still despicable, disgusting behaviour, and protest all you want, but to violently, attack other people and obstruct them, it's like they look like a bunch of toddlers having tantrums. It's not constructive, and it justifies, your opponents.
It does. Now, the next thing we were going to talk about is corporate support of marriage equality. Now, we've discussed this before. You've had a friend who got sent an email at Edith Cohen, the law school there. Is that right?
Oh, it was UWA. Sorry, Justin, when I checked. She's a yes voter.
Yeah.
But when she received the letter, she just felt like it was. She called it bullying, but I wouldn't call it bullying. But it's almost like an insidious sort of virtue signalling, pressure, thumbscrew turning kind of announcement that the university supports diversity, and the message is, and you better too, or or else.
Yeah.
So the UWA Law School teaches and promotes diversity, justice, and equality before the law, which you could argue we have now, equality before the law. So it's our responsibility to create a safe and inclusive environment where every single one of you can feel comfortable in being who you are, and be free to love who you are, unless you're a no voter.
Yeah. I think a lot of us, any people who are working in government departments or big corporations, or big universities, seem to be receiving these kind of emails and lots of lots of handing out rainbow flags and badges and all sorts of paraphernalia, and I've noticed that even quite a few yes voters are unhappy with it. I was speaking with a girl who was actually wearing one of those marriage equality rings, who just thought, I don't like that this is going on, that I really wish it just stay in the civil sphere and not part of the corporate life or the university life, and it's just very very unfortunate that people can't see that, can't put themselves in the shoe of the other side. Like if they said, what if all the corporations were advocating a no vote? And the worst thing is that you don't see any corporations advocating for CEO pay reform. Or the closing of tax loopholes. So
it's easy. It's lazy. It's easy for them to do. It's gutless almost. There's going to be no backlash for doing it.
They won't even stand up for things in their own interest. They won't even stand up for reform of the award system, for example.
Yeah.
They are completely gutless. And these managers of these companies or vice chancellors of the university, it's just another little thing that they can put in their LinkedIn profile that they participated in this inclusion and diversity, blah blah blah, and that actually goes to the final thing we're going to discuss today, which is this is coming from the complete other side of the political spectrum. Helen Razor wrote an article for SBS. Gender equality isn't about working women in media. It's about others who don't share our privilege. And basically what she's doing is she's lambasting the Cheryl Sandbergs of the world, that the whole idea that getting a few more women in top C positions is somehow going to advance the interests of underprivileged people and women and so on. And it I think it relates to the marriage equality thing, because we're just seeing corporations jumping on all of this diversity, same-sex marriage, all of these slacktivist causes that really cost them nothing. And they're absolutely milking it. But, are they, are these, are these corporations saying, is there a way that we can recruit people who don't necessarily have a university education?
Yeah.
To train them up. Like, can we find someone who's genuinely from a lower social class who might have missed out on some educational opportunities, so that they can get a shot? And I don't think they're interested in that at all. Their interest, all of this diversity stuff, is about women and people of colour and gays and lesbians who attend top universities, wanting their shot at the top positions. It's about them getting into the 1%. It's not about spreading the 1% around.
That's right. It's just like the whinging about the lack of numbers of women on the boards for the ASX 100 companies. There's only whatever percentage of boards that have women on them, and that's like, well, so what about diversity in the garbage truck rounds? Do we want to see equal representation of women in those jobs or dangerous jobs? We don't hear about that. It's just like you say, the upper echelons demanding more, and it doesn't help most people. It's not going to, like Helen says, having more women in top media roles isn't going to help women in general.
And it's not, and we also know that women rarely marry down. So a lot of these women who are waving the flag of gender diversity and what a great thing that is for society, they're married to the men who are in the C positions. Not all of them, of course, but a lot of them are. So they're entrenching their own privilege.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm all for diversity in a very broad sense. But not quotas and Yes, yeah.
Just trying to force things in that way, I think it's just counterproductive.
Yeah, it's I'm all for, but it's really hard. I've been a disability employment consultant. If you want to take someone who's genuinely disadvantaged, they're not going to be the perfect candidate. They're going to need a lot of work. They're going to be a massive fixer-upper because they didn't go to the right schools. They don't have the right internal knowledge. And I don't see any evidence that corporations or government departments are a bit better, I think. I think they do genuinely take a bit more risks on, some more out there candidates. But you speak to anyone who's tried to get a job in a government department, like it's very hard to get in there. It's just so frustrating that that we're constantly being told how evil we are for being, white, heterosexual, and in my case male, by people who are really just as privileged as we are. So, yes. So next week, what's and do you see any big news coming up in the horizon?
Maybe a few more stories about some more vigilante groups forming. There might be a group from the no side looking for vilification from the yes campaigners. So it's just going to become a bit more of a circus for another month.
The difficulty thing is of course for the no side is usually when these things happen, they get laughed off. That's
I know.
I was watching, I can't remember if it was Independent Man or Sargon of Akkad, but one of those two showed a video of this black rapper who, in his video clip, hung a white child. Like,
really?
yeah, and that is not unacceptable. So, it doesn't seem to matter it doesn't seem to matter how offensive you are if you're a minority. You get away with it. You know, YouTube won't take your videos down.
There's definitely a double standard. It's pathetic.
Yeah, and yet, you know, you can. But if you're on the no side or on the wrong side of whatever the issue is, you hand someone a brochure that says a child deserves a mother and a father. Children who don't have that are disadvantaged. You're the worst thought criminal in Australia. So, and
I don't think that's an outrageous opinion to have, really.
I think that's probably an opinion that if they had a second question on the plebiscite, that'd get up 70%, I reckon.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I have issues with the whole surrogacy thing, and I've been called a bigot just for saying that. But just like creating children, like, it's one thing to kind of help kids who've had a rough ride and you're giving them a good home.
Yeah.
But to actually create a baby with the express purpose of giving it to a set of parents who are not, well, maybe only one of them is biologically related to them, especially if there's no mother involved, I think that is robbing them of their, like, genetic heritage. And you can just poo-poo that away, but kids who have grown up without that, and adopted kids, it's so important to them finding out about their roots. And here we are just, like, doing it on purpose.
Yeah.
So,
and
we should be able to talk about that.
I honestly don't know what I think about that. I've kind of come round on the rainbow families, like I said before.
Yeah.
You know, some of my, because, you know, I come from a mother and father, never got divorced, you know, traditional conservative family. So I've come round on it a bit, but I haven't thought about it deeply. But the reality is a lot of people are extremely uncomfortable with redefining the traditional family. And you know, that's a debate that has to be had, and people just don't want it to be had.
I want to feel like I don't have to feel afraid about saying that, so that someone else can turn around to me and say, oh no, but this and that, and it's okay, or here's some studies, or. But if I feel like I can't even say it, I mean, I don't have any trouble saying it, but someone like me, someone similar might. Yeah. And then you can't kind of point out why, and so you just kind of keep that worry to yourself, and there's no discussion. No one wants to be jumped on and be called a bigot.
That's and honestly, free speech is sunlight. I mean, I just can't say that enough. I mean, there's a prominent person in the, I guess you'd say, in the alt-right who came out recently and said in a Facebook post, you know, I'm not saying the Holocaust didn't happen, but I'm not convinced it did either. And that was great he said that, because we all know that he's an idiot. And those of us who kind of, you know, vaguely knew of this person and, you know, had some of the same friends with him and things, so, you know, kind of thought, oh, maybe he's all right, he's a bit far right, but, you know, not too bad. But like, for those of us now, we now know this guy's like full-on Holocaust denialist. And it's like, shit, I don't want any association with that person. Like, anyone who thinks that, you know, 6 million Jews being killed, and many, many other people, is like a debatable thing. And that's just, but like, I don't think we need laws against Holocaust denial. You know, I just think, like, but when people say those views in public, they just out themselves as idiots.
So it's good that they can, isn't it?
Yes.
In Germany, it's against the law, isn't it?
It is. So, you know, honestly, and the way people's opinions change is by kind of, to be honest, by pressure. It's amazing how, like, take this same-sex marriage issue. Like, it's amazing how, like, the gayness, like, in my lifetime and in your lifetime, it's gone from being acceptable to make jokes about gay people to, like, and really seeing them as being sort of quite out there, like to like now you can't even like question the whole idea of same-sex marriage, like, and that's all through like media and like just discussion and free speech and just pressure. It's amazing how malleable most people's views are when they get pressure from other people. So and all these people like super behind the issue. They act like if they were living 20 years ago that they would have been totally for it. Like, no, they wouldn't. Like, they would.
Well, even Penny Wong was she?
No.
Penny Wong and Bill Shorten and Julia Gillard were all anti same-sex marriage a tiny little while ago.
Yeah. So I think it just shows the way, like, if you have free speech, how like ideas evolve, and like hopefully they evolve in a good direction, in a more liberal direction. No guarantee of that, but like that's, and the changes in the law only follow community attitudes. So like by the time you're passing anti-vilification laws, most 80% of people are going to like full rip you a new one for having that view anyway. So, like,
which is why we don't need them.
Exactly.
And I actually find it really worrisome, to tell you the truth, when we're going with hate speech laws that direction.
Oh, it's terrifying because it's going in very very scary directions. But on that note, if you want to help fight the war on free speech, join LibertyWorks at libertyworks.org.au. You can join for free.
Do it.
And we have regular events and some really great speakers. And we also have Liberty Fest coming up in Brisbane next month. So on that note, I think we'll wrap up. Thank you, Nicola. Have a good afternoon.
Thanks, Justin. You too.
See ya.